It is Talking Reds, it is Talking Reds Live. I'm Josh Sexton, joined by Fuad Hasan for the Anfield Wrap to look ahead to Liverpool's game against Leicester City tonight, of course, at Anfield. And Fuad, I'm excited, to be honest, I'm excited to get back into Anfield again. I felt like before the Cardiff game on Sunday, it felt like ages since Liverpool had played at Anfield, to be honest, ages since we got to sort of have that kind of day out. And it almost felt reflective of that to me in a way, in terms of the way the atmosphere was. It was a bit of a party atmosphere. The sub, in particular, Harvey Elliott and Luis Diaz coming out at the same time, added to that atmosphere. And I'm just excited for what a spectacle this could be tonight, because under the lights at Anfield, a big Premier League game as well, it's massive, isn't it?
That's it, isn't it? Exactly. The Sunday game was a bit more of a fun one, and everyone was still kind of waking up because of the kickoff time and all of that. So this one, everyone's going to be up for, aren't they? It's going to be a bit of a, everyone's going to get a couple of drinks before, a couple of hours out of work before, and everyone is up for it because it is a big game, like you just said. Liverpool do need to go out and almost have a bit of a point to prove because of how the other game went at the King Power, and also the little bit of needle that's kind of developed between the both fan bases and even on the pitches as well. So Liverpool will be really up for it, and I think that will reflect in the stands because this is a real opportunity now with all the games coming up this month to start building that run, start building that momentum going into the business end.
And it feels like we've got a strong squad to be dealing with this now, doesn't it? Jurgen Klopp holds his press conference yesterday, and the only sort of injury concern that we've got really going into this is that of Jordan Henderson. We've had Joe Gomez and Oxlade-Chamberlain back in training since COVID. Thiago is obviously back in training. Harvey Elliott coming back at the weekend as well. Sadio Mane, it looks like will be a bit too late of an arrival for this one, but then you've got Mo Salah absolutely chomping at the bit to get a start. So there's so many options there, isn't there, that Liverpool could potentially go with. It's almost hard to pick a strongest 11.
It is. I'm looking forward to seeing that bench, because no matter who he picks, it's going to be some bench, and yeah, you're sort of in the place, aren't you, now, where because of how they've dealt with how the players have stepped up in the absence of Salah and Mane and Keita. We saw players like Chamberlain and others kind of step up, Jota, and kind of fill that void and really take responsibility. Now adding those people back, adding Thiago back, there's a lot of people that have that confidence in the bank now and can rely on that. Chamberlain, yes, he was missing the other game, but you'd think he'd come back pretty confident because of the run of games he had before. So no matter who he picks, you're not really too fussed. There's so much excitement. There's youth. There's players like Thiago that we haven't seen for a long time that we kind of want to see back on the pitch. So there's loads he can do, and it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes, because I think there's a bit of, because of the amount of games coming up and because of the short kind of period in between each, there's a little bit of forward planning needed, I think. I think he's probably looking at Inter and thinking, he needs Salah back in his best rhythm, he needs Mane back in his best rhythm, and I think that informs the next two games a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. We recorded a press conference reaction show on our subscription service yesterday. You can check that out on our app. I'll tell you a little bit more about our app later, and it pertains to this signed Diogo Jota shirt, which you won't be able to actually see it signed by Diogo Jota yet, but hold on to the end for more information about that. But Fuad, one of the interesting things about Jurgen Klopp's press conference in particular was that he comes out and talks about sort of a couple of the players, particularly how Diaz has been settling in. There's been a few articles today sort of pertaining to that as well, one from Neil Jones in particular, which sort of gives the inside track on Luis Diaz's first days. And I'm finding this particularly interesting at the moment, sort of how much detail there is around Diaz. And I think first and foremost because it's reflective of how much excitement there is for the signing, isn't it?
Exactly. There's so much, and it's not just from us, as fans and people who kind of saw the price tag and you get excited because it is a big money move. You can tell from within the club as well that there's so much excitement. The manager seems to be, it seems to be his signing. He seems to be the one that's sort of driven it, and the fact that they've managed to. It seems like bringing another guy where they always do their due diligence, don't they, when it comes to the person and the character. But he really seems like a really nice, sound, humble guy. And, I like the bit as well in James Pearce's article where, they talk about getting references from Grujic and, how, Liverpool still have that connection with a former player. It just shows how well run Liverpool are and how well they keep the relationships, not just with people at the club currently, but people that do move on.
Especially
they still have that
like
trust.
Grujic as well, who's like a young player, was on loan for ages. It's mad really that they can still use him for the benefit of something else.
I mean, he says that he sort of talked Liverpool up to him a little bit and gave him kind of the inside track, and he's a player who didn't quite work out for, but he still has so many positive things to say, which just shows the people around. I mean, if Pep Linders and Jurgen Klopp rang me up to come play for Liverpool, I'd be on the first flight out. Do you know what I mean? No matter, I'd play for free. That's how it is, because they're just two really great people, but also professionally and in the football sense, they are the best in the world. They're right up there in terms of what they brought to this club and how they develop players. And Diaz would have seen that. He would have seen the likes of how Mane came in and the levels that he's got to. Salah even he'll be looking at that and saying, you know, I'm in the best place possible, not just to win things, but also to take my game to the next level.
100%. The two articles we referenced there, one by Neil Jones on goal.com and one by James Pitts from The Athletic, but also Fuad, there was Jurgen Klopp in his press conference yesterday talking about how well Luis Diaz had been settling in, and you mentioned Pep Lijnders there and how crucial Pep Lijnders had been in that settling in process. He sort of casually dropped in that Pep speaks Portuguese and Spanish, so either language, whatever language Luis Diaz wants to speak in, Pep Lijnders is there. And to be honest, I loved that like little introduction video that the club put out where they showed, you know, him walking up the stairs and Kirby and Jurgen Klopp giving him a hug, because I just loved how basically Anglo Jurgen Klopp was about all of it. Like there's a bit where Luis Diaz is like, oh, sin English, and Jurgen Klopp goes, yeah, no problem. So I think that's obviously good news that Pep Lijnders is there, so then Jurgen Klopp doesn't have to be basically just so English about the whole thing.
Yeah, it was funny because I think he mentioned as well, like, he only speaks German or something, and Diaz looked at him like, I mean, this is not going to work if this is how it's going to be. So luckily Lijnders...
So good Deutsch.
Yeah, luckily Lijnders is there. You know, he's quietly got quite a few, hasn't he? In that article, Gruich mentions he'll get on with the Brazilian lads, and he seems like he will. He seems like he likes a bit of a dance. I can imagine him and Firmino kind of becoming best pals.
Well, there's been like Jota bantering him
Jota as well,
on Instagram. Thiago has been like putting pictures up with him and stuff like that. It's just nice, and it feels like a nice squad to come into in that sense. Like there's obviously you know, you mentioned it before, there's a bit of an almost sound lads policy that Liverpool have where they do their due diligence and get these kind of players in, and Luis Diaz seems to be another one of them. But also, you know, even if he wasn't to an extent, then this squad is such that you think like he could still gel into that quite well.
Exactly, the environment that's been created, and there's a lot of people that, you know, have to take credit for that. It's not just the manager; it's a lot of the senior players around that. You know, you look at James Milner, you look at Jordan Henderson. And, you know, if you're going back, you are looking at people like Gini Wijnaldum, who was part of that leadership group. You know, that culture and that environment has sort of been maintained from the beginning of kind of Klopp's reign, really. And obviously it does start with him. So for anyone coming in, you know, there's immediately, it just doesn't seem like there's that ego thing. There's that sort of slight awkwardness maybe when a player comes in and there, you know, if you are playing in this position, for example, you do have that bit of competitive edge. I'm sure it's on the training pitch, but generally around it seems like a great place, and we've seen that, you know, work to our benefit on the pitch, because, you know, you can tell the lads, you know, Jordan Henderson could scream at Virgil van Dijk for 90 minutes, but at the end of it's all good. You never hear of any issues or anything like that. So the environment's perfect, and, you know, we talk about him coming in and hitting the ground running. We don't want to put any hard expectations on him, but it seems like it's very much possible because of all the kind of the environment that's been created.
Would you be tempted to give him a cheeky start tonight?
I mean, my heart says so, yeah, just because I want to see him play. But I think if we're kind of looking at it differently, I see it being a bit of one that's too soon. I don't see him starting this one or the next one even, really. Yeah. I feel like Burnley as well is a bit of a baptism of fire as well if he starts in that one. So I think he comes on tonight, depending on the game, and even you know, even if Liverpool are still level, you'd still back him. It's everything you hear from the manager sounds like he's already naturally got a lot of the raw kind of ingredients, and also the intelligence that he was looking at. I think that's why he spoke so highly after the Cardiff game. That goal was, you know, it showed that kind of innate pressing ability and desire to win the ball back and defensive kind of discipline. So I think he's got all those things to be able to come in now. So you would trust him. I wouldn't have any doubts, but maybe just for him in terms of easing himself into the whole thing, they might hold off.
Yeah, there's also a big Mo Salah question mark then, really, isn't there, which the thinking around Luis Diaz comes into. You sort of imagine that it's still the sort of time where Bobby Firmino and Diogo Jota are two of the first names on the team sheet from there, and it's the third place you're picking for. So then it is whether you go for a Diaz, whether Jurgen Klopp is prepared to have that tough conversation with Mo Salah after the disappointment he's just suffered, or whether even, you know, you give Harvey Elliott a start out on that right hand side.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an option. I think that might be a good one, actually, because, you know, you'd expect Leicester to be pretty, you know, tight at the back, and it'd be one of those low blocks that we saw at the King Power. The Salah thing is interesting, just because, you know, there's really good arguments for both, and what might end up happening is the kind of physical side of things. Yes, he keeps himself in such good shape, but I feel like I'm a bit scared on his behalf because of the amount of football and because of all those games going all the way. You know, that he played 3 lots of, you know, 120 minutes in that AFCON and hasn't had really any gap in between. So you do wonder if he's sort of going on adrenaline at the moment, and for his body's sake, he just needs that recovery, because there's a lot of games coming up. He's not going to be short of minutes. You know, he's not going to be displaced from the team. So I do wonder maybe if if he does hold him back and bring him on, and he gets that reception as well, Salah, doesn't he? If he comes on 60 or whatever it is, he gets that reception from Anfield, and that might do him the world of good.
Yeah, and there's a question mark in midfield as well. Fabinho obviously doesn't start the game on Sunday, but you'd imagine he comes sort of straight back into the fold. But then if Jordan Henderson's injury is sort of serious enough to at least keep him out of tonight, then there's the potentially, two shirts up for grabs there, really, given what's gone on in recent weeks. So I don't know what you'd be doing if you'd be going Naby Keita, Curtis Jones, or whether Thiago comes straight back into the fold if he's ready. Again, Harvey Elliott is another option there.
Harvey Elliott is another option. I think we see Thiago back in, to be honest. I think he'd come in if Fabinho does start this, and then you're sort of comfortable.
Too.
Chamberlain, Chamberlain. I mean, the options are.
Chamberlain's always the one I forget. I feel bad.
There's just so many options now, isn't there? Like you look at all three of those that you mentioned there: Jones, Elliott, Naby Keita, and Chamberlain. Four of them, you'd be happy with any really to add to Fabinho and Thiago. I think that's one where we do need to get the best out of, because we saw real glimpses of that partnership, Fabinho and Thiago kind of blossoming before the injury. They looked really good together, and I think you can sort of pick any one of the others to fill in. And I'd go with Jones. I feel like he sort of deserves the game, and he looked like he was getting back into his rhythm in that second half against Cardiff, and I feel like he can be really big for us the next few weeks.
Absolutely. I will read through some of the comments. The first one is from Mitchell Balzan, I think his name is. Says it looks like the first day of Year 7 in ICT. Jealous, I reckon. Jealous of our youthful good looks. Daniel Firmanov says, hey guys from Melbourne, Australia, going to Merseyside Derby, suggestions for drinking spots around Anfield. There's been a few good suggestions in the comments, to be fair there, Daniel. Also, we record our post-match show in the Glenbook Hotel, so come down and have a pint with us and say hi, that would be nice. A few shouts for Taggies, the church, etc., etc.
When's the derby? That's a while away, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah.
Good
plan ahead.
Yeah.
Linda H says, 5:48 in Ohio. Hello, good morning. Hello, Linda, all the way in Ohio. That's nice, isn't
amazing.
it? Mick's been going back to say Pogues in town there. Mick loves a Pogues, doesn't he? Elfin Priest says we need to end Rodgers' career tonight. There's a bit of an interesting sort of Brendan Rodgers angle going into this. I think there's a few people who are sort of assuming that his job at Leicester is starting to be up for grabs. Seems to be a little bit of obviously, as Elfin Priest is saying there, a bit of resentment towards him still. I don't personally feel that, to be honest. I think that 13-14 season is sort of one of the best Liverpool sort of following years of my adult life, and for that I'm more grateful to Brendan Rodgers than anything that came after that, really. But I also don't think he should be anywhere near insecure in the Leicester job, to be honest. I think he's been doing good things there up until now. Exactly.
To me, and from the bits that you hear from Rodgers, I think that last game against Forest was really telling, and where he sort of comes out and says some of these players don't really want to be here, is essentially what he said. And you see that the amount of rumblings you hear about people like Tielemans and others, you sort of do wonder if it is a time for a big refresh. I know there's a big thing in football, isn't there, where you can't change all the players, so you have to change the manager. But it does feel like Leicester maybe at that point where they have to cash in on a few of them and then use that money to be smart in the transfer market like they have done in the past. They've been really good in getting in young players and getting in players that go under the radar a little bit and really kind of take that next step at Leicester. So you think that they go with that again, because you look around and you sort of wonder what manager of that level are they going to be able to bring in at the moment. It's difficult right now. So I don't see anything big happening. They've also had injuries as well, which no one really likes to talk about, but it is a thing, and especially we've seen it at centre half. They've had the exact same issues in terms of players.
They had that mad COVID spell as well. They didn't play for about 3 weeks. So,
which doesn't help anyone. And Fofana comes back. That's huge for them, because he's the one that's really. He's their best centre half, really, and the others have just not really, the ones that have come back from injury, just not really found any form.
Yeah, absolutely. Jazz D says, Fuad, put those glasses on, I want to see.
No, they're really dirty, so I'm sort of like...
there's more comments.
Help them.
More comments about our youthful good looks, Fuad. Tahir Iqbal says, it's Cabbage Patch Kids today. So it's a bit harsh.
That's a bit harsh, yeah.
Loads of people just going in on us, but there's all sorts of nice comments from all around the world as well, which I'm enjoying. 7 p.m. in China. Love this channel and can't wait to see the Reds back in action tonight. 4 a.m. China time is when the game is. God, that's a late one, isn't it?
It is.
I'm not sure I could be doing that.
I reckon we could do a 4 a.m.
Do you reckon?
We could do a 4 a.m. match. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what state.
I'd be absolutely into it. There's loads more of this kind of thing. Loads more reactions to the Leicester game coming up tonight on our Anfield Wrap app. As I said, loads more build-up to the Leicester game too. We're recording the Gutter show today. If you like all of your transfer stuff, and that will be available on the Anfield Wrap app, you can download that. There's links in the description to that. And at the moment, there is a special offer on, which if you download the Anfield Wrap app now, if you're a new customer, you'll get entered into the prize draw. If you already got the Anfield Wrap app, you're already automatically entered into the prize draw to win this Diogo Jota shirt. So make sure that you get on that. Make sure you follow us on socials as well and check out the posts around that. Give it a little reshare, you know. Give it a like on Instagram. Give us a like on YouTube here as well. Subscribe to the channel. And most of all, download the Anfield Wrap app because you'll want a shirt signed by the lad who's better than Figo, don't you know? Won't you? Up the Reds.